We know more people than any time in history, and yet we feel very much like we have nobody to confide in. Modern day loneliness is not because we need to interact more. It's because we need more intimacy. And so I went and I compiled, when you look at all the social scientists and what they're studying, when they look at what bonds any two people, who we confide in, what makes two people best friends, 3 common denominators emerge. At the beginning of all of our relationships, the first requirement is the letter P, and that is positivity. The second requirement, the letter C, is consistency, and the third requirement is vulnerability.
According to Nelson, the more you build these 3 components into your friendships, the higher up you go in the friendimacy triangle and the closer you get to your friends. The thing is, it requires a lot of time, effort, and willingness to open up from both parties, and that is a difficult part. So that is why the vast majority of our friendships are at the bottom of this triangle. When I asked you guys on Instagram about any friendship problems that you guys are facing, all of them fit into these 3 different categories. Some of you guys are lacking positivity in your friendships, whilst others are finding it difficult to keep in constant contact with your friends. And finally, there's the group of you guys that are finding it a little bit difficult to open up and be vulnerable with your friends. So in today's video, I wanted to talk a little bit about making friends and maintaining friendships and how we can build more positivity, consistency, and vulnerability in that process so that hopefully we can make more genuine connections and maybe even end up with lifelong friends. Without further ado, let's get right to it. Before we begin with the actual tips, I wanted to put forth 2 mindset shifts around what it means to have meaningful friendships. And the first thing that I want to suggest is that we don't need better friends, but better friendships. Saying that you need better friends implies that your current friends are not good enough and they don't live up to your friendship standards. And that's not what I'm implying at all. Just like any relationship, a friendship is something that can grow stronger over time as long as both parties, you included, are willing to put in the effort to make sure that it happens. I think in the recent years there has been this wave of self-love which has put a lot of attention on cutting off toxic people or building boundaries, and all of these things are super important, especially with people who are actually not good for you. But I think that implies that problems in your friendships always comes from someone else, which isn't always true. I think in order to have good friendships, you also need to put in the effort to be a good friend and to communicate with your friends about what you are looking for in a friendship. What I'm implying here is that you don't have to go out and find new friends. You can just think about the friends that you currently have who you already have a positive vibe with and look into deepening those friendships instead. The second friendship reframe that I want to suggest is that there's no one right way to have friends. And what I mean by this is that there is no optimal number of friends that you should have. There is no difference between whether you are close to a group of friends or whether you just have individual friendships with multiple different people. I think when I was younger and in school, I never belonged to any one group of friends and I always felt very left out. I always wondered whether me not having a clique meant that there was something wrong with me socially. But over time I realized that it's actually very normal for people just to resonate and click with different people, and everyone's individual network of friendships will look a little bit different. So don't be so hung up on the specifics. Now that we've covered these 2 mindset reframes, let's talk about how to build and maintain stronger friendships. The first thing that I suggest is to take the first step. This is something that I personally faced a lot of back in college, especially when I met someone really cool who I wanted to get to know better. I always tended to hold back because I was afraid of the fact that they would judge me, that I wasn't cool enough. I was afraid of coming across too eager maybe. But honestly though, I think people usually don't take the first step not because they're judging you, but because they themselves are fearful of rejection. In fact, that's how I got together with my closest group of friends right now. We all live in different parts of the world, but we still call every single week. And how we initially got together was I just asked all of them to have dinner with me, like as a group. And we just ended up doing that every week after. So, just take the first step, and you never know, that just might be the start of a very precious lifelong friendship. My next tip is to take responsibility for being a good friend. Now, I know this point might seem obvious, but I don't think that it's something that we all actually conscientiously always apply. I think while building a friendship from scratch, it's very important to ask yourself how you can try and build those three elements: positivity, consistency, and vulnerability into your interactions. So by being positive, you would do things like asking questions about them, being curious about them, not taking up the space in the conversation, or just talking about yourself. Being more positive could also include expressing gratitude for their friendship, complimenting them, being there to support them if they are facing any problems. Consistency is something that is much more easily achieved when we are in school because we see our friends every single day. But when you come out of school and start going to the workplace, it's much harder to be conscientious. So I think when you start working, it's more about remembering important dates, following up with friends you haven't seen with in a while, doing something which I call bids for connection, meaning that if I see an article or photo or anything that reminds me of said friend, I'll send them that item and be like, hey, was thinking of you, this reminded me of you, just so that they know that I'm, having them in my thoughts. Something else that you can do to be more consistent with your friendships is to build them into your routine. So for example, as I said, in college I had some friends that I would meet every single week at the same time for a meal with. And if that's not possible because you guys have conflicting schedules, something else that you could consider is potentially joining in on something that they already do consistently. So if they volunteer every week at the same time, you could volunteer together, and hopefully that will build a stronger bond between you both. My next tip when it comes to making friends is to ask yourself how they really make you feel and why. I think the reason why I say this is because not every single person that we meet is eventually going to end up being our friend, right? Like some people, after you meet them, you feel uplifted and happy and positive, which is a good thing. But I'm not sure if you guys had this experience, but for me, there have also been times where I would meet people, and over time, I would find that after we meet, I'll be feeling things like uncertainty and mistrust. I think if you feel any sort of negative emotion, you need to interrogate yourself about why you feel that way. Is it because of certain ways that behave around you? Do they put you down? Or is it originating more from an inner sense of insecurity or comparison? And sometimes it's not even that insidious. Sometimes it's just that you have nothing in common. So as you continue meeting your friends and you find that you're no longer clicking anymore, I don't think that there's anything wrong with just letting that friendship go. You don't have to stay in friendships that no longer give you a sense of peace. It's alright to be intentional with your friendships, because then you can really invest in the people who truly matter. My next point is to be honest about your needs with your friends. This is a tip that I think is a little bit more useful for friends that you've already had for a while, friends that you are a little bit closer to. Honestly, this is something that I really struggle with. Communicating my needs to my friends is not something that I am very used to doing. I think most of us, if we annoy our friends, we will just keep it inside and not try and change them. But I think the more I think about it, the more I realize that that is quite avoidant, and that we should be showing up in our friendships the way that we show up in our other relationships, which includes communicating how we feel clearly. The reality is that our friends are not perfect people, and whilst we do our best to try and accept them for that, sometimes their not so great qualities might get in the way of having a very strong friendship with us. So for example, I've had friends who are extremely flaky, meaning that they would not respond to messages, they would keep not showing up for meetings. And usually when I encounter friends like these, I would just be like, I'm not putting in the effort to become closer with them because they obviously don't value my time enough to respond to my messages or prioritize the time that we set aside to spend together. But there was this one friend who I really valued in college who was exactly this type of flaky person. So I asked myself, like, is her friendship worth enough to me to voice this concern? And at that time my answer was yes. I was actually really nervous to have the conversation with her, but I just sat her down and I told her honestly that I really value our friendship, but the fact that you're so flaky makes me feel that you don't really treasure mine in return. And I think after that she was so apologetic, and she really made it a point for the rest of our time together in college to be more conscientious about not cancelling on me and responding to my messages. So even though this is something that I have a lot of difficulty with, I think my example with my friend really shows that if you do it in a mature way and with a mature friend who is willing to compromise and see your point of view, it can actually go really well. Of course, if you communicate your needs and your friend get upset and they are unwilling to compromise, I think it really does say something about your friend and them not being understanding of your needs. I guess at that point, it's up to you to decide whether it's worth staying in that friendship or not. My last friendship tip is to realize that different friends will have different capacities and that the role they play in your life may change over time. Remember that friend that I was just talking about who was really flaky in college but improved after I told her my needs? At that time, we were meeting about every week or every 2 weeks. Now we are living very far apart on opposite sides of the earth, and I know that she's really busy with work, so sometimes it's still really difficult to get in contact with her. Now, I don't take it personally because I realize that this is the kind of person she is, and that's what I mean when I say that everyone has different capacities. Some people are able to show up for you more than others. I think in the past I was very hung up that all of my friends should be able to provide me all these things: vulnerability, consistency, and positivity. But over time I've become a lot more relaxed about it. I understand the limits of some of my friends. Like, for example, some of my guy friends can't really have deep heart-to-hearts because they just don't have a lot of informed thoughts on topics that I like to talk about with my girlfriends, right? And I've come to realize I can just go to different friends for different things. I hang out with one group of friends to get a good laugh, and I hang out with another group of friends to play board games, and I hang out with another group of friends to have really deep heart-to-hearts with. Point being that, you can have friends that serve different purposes, and that's fine. And on top of that, the friends that might have served purpose A in the past might serve purpose B in the future. At the end of the day, I think I've just become a lot more relaxed with my friendships. As long as there are good vibes, as long as we have a good time, and as long as I know that they will be there for me when I need them, that's all that really matters to me now. If you got till here, thank you for watching, and leave your own friendship advice / problems down in the comments below. I'll see you guys in my next video coming real soon. Bye.